How do United look without Bruno Fernandes? Because that's the accusation, Mark, right now about Manchester United. That without Bruno Fernandes in the starting lineup, which is how they lined up today, at the beginning of the match, how are they as a team? Are they too reliant on one individual to make things work? An individual that has played the vast majority of matches across all competitions this season and has covered a lot of ground and is starting to look a little bit tired at the business end of the season.
Yeah, there's no doubt in that he's had a huge influence since he's come to the club, and that's credit to him because in comparison to Van de Beek, I think as soon as Fernandes came to the club and started playing, he looked like he'd always been a Man United player. And certain players can do that. They can walk into the building and I always talk about the shirt being too heavy for some players because it's Manchester United shirt. So you've got to go there and say, listen, I'm a Man United player now. I'll show you what I can do. And that's what he did as soon as he walked in the building. So his influence has been huge. And I think there is a possibility that Man United, because of the way they play and they're constantly looking for his influence and looking to play him into good areas so he can create and cause problems for opposition. I think when he's not there, which hasn't been on too many occasions this season, you have to say, when he's not there, then they do lack something. But I take your point. I think in recent weeks, certainly in big games when teams have closed up the space that he likes to work in, I think he hasn't had the influence that United would have liked from him, only because he just seems a little bit frustrated that teams have maybe understood how he goes about his business and they have a game plan. Clearly, you're not going to allow Man United's most influential player the ability and the time and space to create against you. So teams will work him out. And if they can condense the space he has to operate it, then he's not going to have the influence that he has had in games. So teams obviously are going to try and do a job on Bruno Fernandes because they know how influential he is for Man United.
Is that what you would do? If you were managing today, if you were in the league right now and you had a game against Manchester United, would you be setting up your shop in training 3 days before, focusing on Bruno Fernandes?
Yeah, obviously, clearly, you're not going to ignore the influence or the potential of Bruno Fernandes in a game against you. I mean, if he's in key areas of the field and he's given time and space, then he will hurt you and he will create chances or he'll take them himself. So as a manager in opposition, you're going to have a game plan and you're going to work on that to ensure that your team understands that a player of that ilk, a player that can damage you and hurt you, isn't going to have the time and space to affect the game. And you've got to work hard on that. And that's the reality of certainly when he did come on today, he didn't really have any influence, only because Leicester were playing really well and were on the front foot and didn't allow him that time and space which he wants to create.
Good news, though, for Manchester United, Emil, at least, would be Paul Pogba starting this game. He came off the bench in midweek. He's been missing through injury, scored, and he set up a goal here today. So perhaps there's no need to be too overly reliant on Bruno Fernandes, but this is only if Paul Pogba continues to show good form, something he's been lacking since he joined Manchester United. What is it, 5 years now? Time really does fly by sometimes.
Yeah, look, I think a fit Paul Pogba and a confident Paul Pogba, everyone knows that he's a great player. At this moment in time, he's not playing his best football. But if you can get Paul Pogba back to his best, arguably when he was at Juve, you've got a serious player. I think Ollie would love to keep him. I think he's going into his final year now, isn't he? So again, Ollie was quoted in saying that he's back and they've missed him. So they think highly of him and they'll obviously want him to stay. But he needs to start putting in performances as well. You can't just leave everything on Fernandes. You've got all these players that are wonderful players in their own right, but they need to show that. You need to be putting your hard graft in as well and showing your technical ability when it's needed. But like I said, if you can get Paul Pogba back to the Juventus style, I think you've got a special player.
But that was 5 years ago.
Exactly.
I mean, that's half a decade ago. Since he's come to Manchester United, he's picked up the Europa League trophy and he's picked up the League Cup. This is Manchester United football club we're talking about. Would you truly expect him to get back to his best like we saw at Juventus? Honestly.
Honestly,
consistently doing it.
Time's against him. Honestly, time's against him. You usually get better tactically, and your spatial awareness and other people being around you and making them better as well. Because he's not going to have the pace that he had there. He's not going to have he'll still have the strength, but he's not going to have the mobility he had there. So he'll need to. It's the other players that he's going to bring out the best in them. So yes, time's against him right now.
What about your take on this, Mark? Where do you fall? Because he's a very divisive character, Paul Pogba. Because on his day, there's very few better than him. His range of passing, his ability to score goals, being able to operate box to box at times. But it's the consistency, isn't it? It's how often is he able to do that?
Well, that's the key, and that's the criticism that's been levelled at him, is that he hasn't had that consistent level of performance throughout his United career. There'll be sporadic moments where you think, goodness me, what an outstanding player he is, because he'll produce something that normal players can't do. The reason he's at Man United and the reason he commands such attention and costs so much money, the reality, is that he has the capability of doing special things on the football field, things that most players aren't capable of doing. But the problem and the criticism has always been that he hasn't done it on a consistent basis. And at times, it's a general work. Sometimes you see him in games where he clearly wants to be on the ball. He wants to influence the game in possession. But our possession, when there's a job to do, sometimes he's been lacking in that regard. And that might be a fitness problem, because clearly he's had issues with injuries, and they've hampered his time at United. But it's when he's been fit, when he's been well, then more often than not, he'll create something. And as he did today, as he did in midweek, he is a player that has the ability to create something out of nothing. And those are the players that have stardust. Those are the special players that fans want to talk about. And Paul Pogba is one of those players. But it's whether or not he will be a great player when he finishes and remembered as such if he doesn't get that consistency of being able to produce week in, week out, which he never has really done at United.
Do you want him to stay at Manchester United? Mark, he just turned 28 about a week, 10 days ago. He should be entering the prime of his career, as they like to say, at 28.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, he's clearly got a manager who supports him, who wants him to do well. He's been public in his support of Paul, and said he wants him to stay. Clearly, it's not as easy as that, because there's a lot of other influences, most notably his agent, who seems very vocal. Mino Raiola is a big player in the football world, and he will obviously know the value of his client. It's whether or not Paul is strong enough, and he should be, because he's not a young player and he's not a young man now. He should know his own feelings in terms of where he wants his career to go. So he should be saying, if he wants to stay at United, he says, yeah, give me the best deal I can get at United. I'm going to stay for my prime years. And if that's the case, I think everybody would be delighted, because, as I've already said, he's a unique player when he's playing well. But you want a consistent Paul Pogba. That would be the key.
Yeah,